How you doing?
Yo, 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 what up, everybody? Oh, they're talking
Hi.
about tacos over there. This is, I just had tacos. We
Like,
had a little Mexican for lunch or dinner tonight. So,
I want to click the comments, but my computer is like on some like next level. Like I just clicked the comment. Now let's see how long it takes to pop up.
Is it about to take off?
Still, no, like something's wrong with my computer to where when I click on stuff, there's like a 3 to 12-second delay.
Oh, that's just grand. That's
And it's not
exactly
even
what you should be
popping
doing.
up. So text, you're gonna have to control the
oh, there it
comment
is.
too. Yeah, see?
All right, I'll do the comments. So tonight Pablo and all of us got together and we thought it'd be good to have uncomfortable conversations.
Well, in all
Um,
fairness, this was Pablo's grand idea.
yes, of course. And to be completely transparent, this is probably the most nervous I've ever been for a podcast.
Agreed.
Like interviewing Adam Calhoun, Chad Prather, Ryan Kelly. Like, nah, that's sweat off my back. I don't care. Like, they're just people. But the topics that we'll be getting into today is as somebody that does care and whatnot. It's in today's world and
You're
today's
so nervous.
I'm very nervous.
It's
Like,
okay,
I'm not
man.
even gonna
Yeah,
lie.
like, yeah.
Not because it's
It's important that we talk about how we're nervous. Like it's
100%.
it's important that people know that like it is very nerve-wracking to have these conversations.
And Pablo, I don't know if you're nervous, but as a white person that is very conscious of one how I treat others, regardless of any type of race or gender, or anything like that. It's nerve wracking for a white person to have these kind of conversations because of the way that things can be misconstrued, taken out of context, and then you're drug on the internet, and the way that people are getting people fired and releasing addresses out of retaliation for things. It's extremely nerve wracking.
Yeah. I agree. Me and Tex were discussing this before the show started. And but I love the idea, you know. So I
I
was just
do.
sitting around and Pablo hit me up and he's like, "Hey, I got an idea." And he's like, "Let's have an episode and it'll wrap up the month and let's have uncomfortable what did you call it?
Uncomfortable
Uncomfortable conversations.
conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like to where we could discuss like the elephant in the room, right? So a lot of times, oh my gosh, like how do you even start the conversation? Like how do we do this when people like because we are going to be talking about like race issues this evening. Um Pablo is a person of color. That was 100% verified by me and Tex before we came live. You guys don't get to see because we are respecting anonymity and privacy. But I think that it's best that like Pablo opens it up because of how like awkward me and Tex are with the conversation.
Yeah.
Like
Well, so first off, thank you both for this. This is a really good opportunity to talk about these things because, as you said, like they're not talked about at all. Um, I've been living on this earth for 34 and a half years, uh, and there are many things that are true about the history, about my own culture, or cultures, as well as the United States, that aren't talked about, especially in history class, English class. And this all stems back from, like, say I graduated high school in '06. So it's stuff that's been going on for more than 20 years. But for, at least for like the sake of like right here, right now, just to like kind of settle and like have everybody like cool down, like for, at least for me, and within my own like comfort zone and stuff, like there aren't any wrong questions. There are, obviously there are like wrong ways of approaching things, and there are wrong ways of saying things. But as for like this conversation, just because, like, this is uncharted territory, our boats may hit some rocks at some point, and that's
mm,
fine. I have enough life rafts and preservers that it should be fine. Uh,
We can be real back end of safety.
So why don't we just like kick it off and we'll just get into the crux of things. Like obviously, as a white person and as a person of color like yourself, we live two different lives here in America. Two different security issues, two different perceptions of life. Um, what from your perspective, what is life living like in America?
who? uh,
Damn, Dad.
wow. How much
For
time do you
someone
have?
who was nervous, he's like, I'm ready. Let's just do
Hey,
this.
that's
And I'm just gonna start this off with like the caveat of like I am just one person. I'm just my own person speaking on behalf of my own
sure.
experiences. I represent Black community, Hispanic community, Afro Hispanic, and I'm also half white. So it's kind of like I'm like a little bit of a melting pot as to that aspect. But from just speaking on behalf of like my answers, I represent my own thoughts. There may be some people in my own community that may disagree on certain things, and that's completely fine. Uh, that is supposed to happen, at least from a growing perspective.
Sure.
Uh, I think the first thing that I could think of uh, is just wow. Which one to start with? Uh,
Um,
Okay,
I,
well, how about we start it off with so
well,
aw,
you're not the only liberal in here, which
you're
is
not.
good.
We have a lot
That's
of
what we
left
want.
peeps now. But thank you.
Yes.
Um, so like it kind of stems off of Texas question, but I feel like it's like a smaller, easier one that I'm always curious about is would you mind like telling us the first time that you noticed that you were being treated differently?
yeah, I was in Boy Scouts. Uh, I went through the whole process. I'm in Eagle Scouts, but when I was younger, I think it was about fifth grade or sixth grade. There's this kid who was from Tennessee, and I grew up in the New England area, and badge that we all want to strive for is uh, wilderness survival, and I think back then it was called like winter preparedness or something strange like that. But they had us all go into the middle of the woods, which is a great way of starting a horror movie. But
For
we had
sure.
like a small group of kids, just like five or six of us, and this new kid named Adam. And for some reason, I think we saw just because like the six of us were all on the same baseball team, so like we're all friends already before Boy Scouts. They picked me to be the pack leader for that weekend, and so I was designating tasks like you get the kingling, you help clear the area, you secure the different ropes to the trees to make sure that the shelter's fine. And I got the a task I told to Adam, and he's like, "I'm not doing what some N word is telling me to do." And it
Just
like stopped me right in my
that
tracks.
comfortably.
Oh
What
yeah,
age was this?
fifth grade, so see 11 years old. Yeah, so like that wasn't the first time I heard the N word or even had it said to myself, but it was the first time where it stopped me in my tracks, and I'm like, excuse me. And he like got up in my face and he like said that same sentence again but enunciating, and I went like I well, for lack of a better phrase, I just blacked out, and I just
Sure.
remember hitting him once, and that was it. That was honestly the last time that I like had ever laid hands on anybody, uh because I realized like what that did to him. It broke his orbital bone with one hit.
Mhm.
And so I felt bad. The pack leaders, we all got together, the parents were called, and everybody like. So I grew up in a, well, not continually one parent. My dad uh, is Marine, was Marine. He has passed, but the phrase is that he is Marine and currently on deployment. So my mom like raised me basically my whole life, and she shows up, and she's a 5'2" Italian lady who was like from Naples, like we're like from this city in the New England, and she shows up and she is flipping out, and I'm trying to calm her down. I'm taller than her, but I'm still 11 years old, and like I'm trying to calm her down, and she's freaking out, and like the pack leaders finally said, I mean, the kid deserved it, if anything,
Yeah.
and that's fine. And I think from then on out, like I started like asking like the questions that were kind of needed to be asked in the household, but my black parental representative was in Kuwait or
Right.
Afghanistan, no matter what time that was, and so there weren't really some decent answers. We had to have the talk as Joe Biden mentioned recently, uh, which my mom tried. She tried giving the talk, and then she's like, "All right, I have a place where I was recommended that we can go and like you can just talk to." So she brought me to a barber shop. It was perfect, and so from then on out, it was like I had like 16 new uncles, and it was great, great, absolutely great.
So where did you learn the gravity of that word? If that was the first time that you heard it.
Around that time too, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because like I wouldn't have been upset if I didn't know what that word meant.
Sure.
Mhm.
Of course.
And of course, like at that time, I had read Huck Finn, and
Okay.
uh, it's kind of like knowledge based on more books than movies at that time. I was a big reader, still am, but at that time, I was just kind of sports and reading and music at that time. But it's still, yeah, my education kind of came in bits and pieces, and mostly on the back end uh, from like the actual application of real life firsthand experiences. And then I learned quickly that there is a big thing called that black anger,
Sure.
where it's not necessarily anything that we do that is different, but it's just the perception of what we're doing is now seen as
Right.
different. Um, as you guys saw, I'm 6'3".
Yeah, you're you're a lot taller than what I thought. Like, I don't know.
Right.
It just wasn't like it was very shocking because he was like, "All right, guys, just so that you know you don't get any guff," and he turned the camera on, and we were like, "Whoa!" Like we weren't expecting that. But
And
yes, you're
so
very
I
tall.
have a big presence. Uh,
Yeah.
I remember being over 6 foot tall since high school, at least. Like I was on the swim team, and so like I did this height. Honestly, for as long as I can remember, I've always just been like a tall person. But there's that like build part of it, and then you add on to the fact that I'm also black. There are a lot of like neon signs that are projected towards a person of that stature just by presence alone. And so, um, one of the first things I like to do is at least um, extinguish that kind of automatic response from anybody that it meets. Because in like the jobs I've had to do, I've had jobs in retail as a store manager, and so when they call for the store manager and I show up, like instantly things get kind of weird.
Yeah.
Uh, but uh,
Why do you think that is?
I don't know.
I have an
Just
opinion
from
on
the
why I think
unknown.
that is, though.
Because like for me, so I grew up in the hood of Dallas. That's where I went to school at. And so for me, my first experience with the N word was actually from black people because I was the minority. So I had to learn what that word was. And then I had to learn at a young age too that I'm not allowed to say it, but they can say it. And so for me, as a child growing up, I was like, well, I don't want to say the word that's bad, but why do they want to say the word that's bad?
Mhm. Well, yeah, as a kid, you don't understand it.
Right. Well, and in all honesty, like I particularly still don't quite get why that word is so attractive to certain people, regardless of race, and why it's even used in general.
Hmm. I kind of have an answer for that.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, 'cause I was interested because I kind of feel the same way. Like, I just think it's like a yucky word in general.
Right. Kind of like the C word. The see you
Yeah,
next Tuesday that you're not really supposed to
but
use
way
in
worse.
general.
But way worse.
Of course, but way
Yeah,
worse. But like you don't see women saying it and owning the word and
right,
taking it on as like a term of endearment amongst women because it's a
right.
dirty word in general. So
yeah. At least from just my own perspective. Again, I have black friends, Hispanic friends, white friends, Asian friends. I have an Asian wife. Um, I only use the word when it's like 100% just my black friends. And it's just for the overall comfort of everybody else. There are times where I've had like it was a mixed group of friends and like other people, other black people have used it within the group. I don't respond or like act negatively towards it or like use it in response, but like it's it's like an understanding of just the culture and just the history behind the word that's then been carried through to the modern age without us wanting it to be there. Because like that word is from a Dutch word for the word black, and it just kind of morphed from there, and it's been attached, much like in a lot of different English words, just based on use or like different modifications of uses, and then it's just been solidified within the culture. But uh, personally, I don't use it too often. I don't necessarily like to use it too often because have a job where I don't get to speak anything but that corporate highbrow bullshit that I don't obviously like. But it's difficult to have it come naturally when my environment, my like daily activity, my like daily life doesn't involve a situation where it would just come naturally. So I understand why it's used within the black community when it's with just black people.
Mhm.
But as for like use of it outside of the community, uh, it it does it does hurt. I
sure.
mean, there are some times where it just gets like it's a hurt of like either they don't know the gravity of the word, or they don't know the connotations behind that word, or they don't know
Mm.
what kind of hurt.
I think that's a
Yeah,
good excuse for somebody like Misfit that likes to use that word on every chance he gets to just say that they don't know the meaning behind it, whatnot. In today's world, maybe 20 years ago, I might agree with you, but in today's world, we all know
Mhm.
that word is not used for anything,
yeah, yeah.
especially from white people.
And I don't know what kind of black people he grew up around, but I like lived in Boston for a few years, as a grad student. Like was in that community, and I know that it's not any different from the community that I grew up in. Like that pass that he may talk about was just between him and that person that gave it to him. That it's not a transferable pass. If you leave your area, like he's now in Texas, voted for the very first time, congratulations to him. But once you leave Boston, you leave your card there. You don't get to have that card and take it with you.
Well, because
Well,
I
I've
mean,
been
one
I
person's voice can't speak for an entire community of people.
right.
Yeah.
Like
And
that's
I've
just
been very close with several black men what that I've worked with and that have come very close to me, um, and neighbors and whatnot. I can guarantee, no matter how close I've been to them, they would never allow me to say it, nor do I really have any appeal to say it
Mm.
for
yeah. I
me.
mean,
So,
like I
like,
grew up just knowing that like it was by far the worst thing. Like
right.
you just you don't utter the word, you don't joke about it, you don't nothing. But like I grew up very different than Tex. Like I grew up in a extremely white area, extremely white community. We had one black family that lived in our entire town. That was it. And I just remember like that was my first experience with people of color in general and the hate. Like I had never seen it in real life until then. And I remember just wondering like why the adults were all so upset. There was a lot of adults really upset when that family moved in. And I remember like it's so crazy the things that you remember from when you were a kid. And I remember my dad getting into a huge fight with another parent at the school over it because they had said, the city garbage is coming and bringing their garbage kids into our community. And my dad lost his mind, like lost his ever living mind. Mind you, the parents, the mother was the head obstetrics and gynecologist at the University of Michigan Hospital, which is a very big, well known hospital. And the
Mm.
dad was a professor. So I was really confused on like, well, why don't what do you mean? Like they're not bad people. They're really nice people. Like I didn't understand that that's why. In my head I couldn't wrap my head around it, but then, it stopped, thankfully. And then I had moved, into an area that was much more diverse and I was happier there, to be honest with you, just because it was not so I don't know. I don't know what the word is. Like I didn't like feeling that way. I like remember always not really liking feeling that way. From the moment that family moved into our community on, it was just a really uncomfortable feeling and I didn't realize that people didn't like each other for that reason. And I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't wrap my head around it as a kid and I still can't wrap my head around it. I do think though that like movies and TV do a lot of that. Like I typically see like not so much anymore, and I think it's gotten a lot better like over the last couple of years. But like let's be honest, like a lot of the lead roles for black actors were usually like gangbangers, drug dealers. Like that's the roles that they so what do you think that does to impressionable brains that are younger or haven't had experience with the black community? Do you know what I mean? Like, and that's how you're seeing them portrayed everywhere. And if you don't have experience, like that's just going to stem that hate that I had to watch when I was little when that family moved in. Like, that's not helping.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it creates some sort of fantasy worlds or some sort of expectation of how a certain interaction is supposed to go. Um,
I think it instills
mm,
fear though, too.
oh yeah, yeah, and then on the flip side, like it gives anybody within that community that same that same falsehood. Like I grew up in the time when Boys in the Hood was like the movie or like Bad Boys, and like at least for me, like and you guys have seen me. I'm lighter skinned,
Hmm.
so I couldn't like attach myself to that. So I like started attaching myself to like baseball players. Like my all time favorite player is Bernie Williams, 100%.
Bernie Williams,
Oh,
Yeah,
Lord.
man.
Here we go,
Number
baseball.
51.
a Yankee.
I'm a Yankees fan. My
Oh
God.
my!
Oh,
I
We gotta
know.
cancel this damn interview.
I mean,
What
we've
the
had this conversation
hell?
before. We've definitely talked about this before.
I was
Yeah,
gonna
and
say you two have literally discussed this before. Why are you
Well,
yeah,
I guess it just dawned on me again. Like,
you blocked it out? It was traumatic.
it's
but
like trauma.
out of all the Yankees, it's Bernie Williams.
Bernie Williams, yeah, okay, for multiple reasons. When I was in little league and then like summer league, started playing high school and college, he was still playing, and so he retired in '06, that same year that I graduated high school. A switch hitter like me. He played center. I played third base, but still, like
So A
out
Rod.
of any player prior to that, outside of maybe like Willie Randolph or yeah,
Oh, come on. Like,
maybe
there were so many greats.
I know, but like at that time, from the best team that's ever hit the field in baseball, it was either Bernie Williams or Derek Jeter. And Jeter,
I'd accept Derek.
I mean, I like Derek Jeter, but for me, it was just that like round face thing that like matched with me, and I'm like, I like 51 sounds better than the number two type of thing, and so I don't know, that's just my own.
See, I'm with Stoney. Like, to me, Griffey Jr. is it. Like, it's hard to top him. I like the swing is the best swing we've ever
Oh,
seen. The
that's like
sweetest
sweet.
swing.
Oh my god, yeah.
Center field, way better than Bernie Williams. Better hitter than Bernie. Like, I mean, like, it was great. So I'm with you
Mhm.
there. Now we do have a serious question here that
Sure.
that Dancy did ask is what is your best advice to a white mom raising a biracial child?
Get to know as much information as you can from as young as it can apply, especially when it comes to basic things that we take for granted, like skincare, hair care. Our hair is, you can write a dissertation on it. And in fact, Chris Rock did a documentary on hair,
Yeah,
or even just like person to person, even within the
that's how
same
I learned what a
family, it's
kitchen
different.
was. Is from that documentary.
Oh, yeah, yeah, it's uh,
Well, it sounds
even
like a barber shop too, like might be a good thing because that seems to what has helped you the most as a
Mhm.
child.
absolutely, yeah. Because I have hair that pre cancer and pre chemo was like super curly, and then it like straightened out just a little bit, like my hair.
I was gonna say it's still
Uh,
pretty curly.
what was that?
I was gonna say it's still pretty curly.
Yeah, yeah, that's the beard. I keep the top up really short, just because it's easier to handle. But we also have like different pillowcases for when like our hair feels in different ways because the oil dissipates in different ways. If you have a, a black woman, their hair and the treatment and the process is a whole other thing than a black man. It's uh, it's basically it's like the perfect personification of individualism is like what our hair does to certain things and also what our skin does. I take care of my skin. I'm 34 and I get carded once in a while. Uh,
Nice.
I do too.
No, you don't.
I'm dead
No, the
serious.
fuck you
I'm
don't.
dead serious. You can act
I can
like
see it. Yeah,
I'm
I can
dead
see
serious. I got carded like 3 years ago for energy drink.
big cards for
I'm
energy
not even
drinks.
lying for just a damn energy drink.
I mean,
I'm
that's
not even
sexist though.
what?
I don't know. If there's anything they're going to be
Pivot,
regulating, it's
pivot.
energy drinks, right? Like,
It's better than being a Bernie Williams fan.
Oh Lord.
I'm just messing with you.
I mean,
Well, no, someone, I
can
think it was GNC
I,
had said, she's like, this might be a harder conversation than the other one when you guys started getting
I
into
mean, I
things.
don't have too many quips back. It's like I don't talk crap on different teams because, like, I can appreciate a lot of things about the Red Sox. Like, their stadium
Of course you can. We win
is
more this decade.
wonderful. When I play the show and I want to hit a lot of home runs, I put my like creative guy on the Red Sox, and I just knocked them wherever the Green Monster. Those seats up there cured me of my fear of heights.
Oh, the
Um,
monster.
Dude, if you haven't gone, you
Oh,
need
I've
to.
gone.
It
Gosh.
is
Totally gone.
so wonderful,
Yeah.
especially when they go over the Green Monster and onto Lansdowne Street,
Yep.
right there. It's beautiful because like it's better than like um, the Giants Stadium where like you hit it into right field and it just gets into the what's that Willie Cove or whatever they call it. Like you don't hear any sort of reactions, but like when you hit over the Green Monster and like people are quiet, like sometimes you can hear people like freak out when a ball just shows up in their life. So like I don't know. I'm a huge baseball fan,
Same.
so I
Look,
can.
I don't get into sports, but I will say that the one thing that I love more than anything in the world is going to a baseball game and buying a huge overpriced beer and an overpriced hot dog. Like I used to love going to opening day at Tiger Stadium. It was like they gave us free tickets all the time at my old job. So I don't know a lot about baseball, but it is my favorite sport out of the sports. I can watch
Absolutely.
baseball. It's
And
actually when me and my husband met, like I used to make him take me to B Dubs so that I could watch the Tigers game while we were out on a date.
Too bad it was the Tigers.
yeah, even in that, like you have Miguel
I know.
Cabrera, which when he got that big contract, that was the very first big contract of that whole like baseball era because it was like 10 years and some sort of ridiculous amounts, and the uh, ESPN like the forums ripped it apart because they're like, how could the city of Detroit do this after like a recession? You sign this one guy to this huge, and so they made a big deal over it. They and I remember the snippet. They said the average income of someone living in the city of Detroit is about like 6 grand less than what Miggy's going to make per game for the rest of his career. And
Yeah.
like I'm like that's mind blowing because like
Now that contract ain't worth jack.
that's another thing that I can spend a whole hour on. It's just how much money is getting just thrown into these franchises, and I could say that as a Yankees
See,
fan.
and
We
then you got
always
AFTC. He just likes to see dudes hug on each other, all sweaty dudes hug all over each other. I mean,
Hey,
to each their own. To each their own.
yeah.
So
so
what
anyways,
now? What
not that I'm
and the
not loving sports talk.
right? What what are some gaps that we can do to you know I guess because from what I hear on a continual basis is obviously equality. Everybody wants to be equal as they should be
Mhm.
and treated equal. How do we get there? Like, what are some small steps we can take to get there?
Like on an individual basis. Like I hate doing like big picture stuff. Like I feel like, right? Is that what you mean? Like on a smaller
Yeah, like
scale, on a bigger scale?
what can someone like Kat and I do to help get us there to where everything that happens in America isn't based on race but just on human being? Because to me, that's equality. Is when a news article is written and it's written that two humans did something, not
Like it was
a white
today.
person. Right. So I don't know if you saw in St. Louis, um, a a man point blank executed another man that was a homeless man sitting on the sidewalk. There was a bunch of people shooting
Oh
it.
wow.
They were different. They were different races. And then when the article was written, it because it was a black man that shot a white man point blank. Um, and it was being filmed by a bunch of idiots that didn't want to help but just would rather film. That's a whole nother
Careful, I'm getting a lot of backlash for saying that today
that's a
because
whole
that
nother
video
topic.
went
I don't
crazy.
care about that. Like, I'll take that heat. But when articles were written, it was zero mention of race. And to me, I appreciated it more than anything because that's the way the news should report, in my opinion. But it does
Unless
seem.
it's a direct result of race.
Hmm.
Like, then I think that it should be. Like, if somebody shoots, hurts somebody just because they're Asian, like if it's a
How do you
hate
prove that
crime,
at the time of the articles written, though?
a lot of times though they already know. Like they've had situations where I mean racial slurs are said or they
Sure, but like in
right.
this case, it could have been easily written that a
Mhm.
black man killed a white man.
Nobody tried to
E-
stop
e-
the thing from happening. They just
Oh my
filmed.
god, thank you. Like
I I
it's
I, I haven't seen it yet, so
I mean we can watch it if you want. Like you
Yeah,
don't
I'll play it.
see it,
Yeah, you don't see it because they cut it
but they're
away.
recording and this guy is fumbling with this gun for a solid minute to a minute and a half. Not really no like, I don't think he was comfortable. Here you go.
oh, this is St. Louis.
Yeah, that's in St.
Mhm.
Louis.
I know exactly where this is.
So you see how he's like fumbling, and there's people that are recording it and narrating it.
Yeah, there it goes.
What? 10
I'm not sure
seconds.
why the guy stayed sitting there
Yeah,
though
we just put a
either.
magazine in it. He's still trying to load it.
It's not a magazine. You read magazine. Oh, fucking
And
hell.
then yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I took a
Okay.
lot of heat online today because I posted it and I was very emotional in the video because like I was like, I mean, we all know, like, yeah, you don't do that to somebody. This guy is going to be held accountable. Like, there's video. I mean, he shot him point blank in the middle of broad daylight. There's no getting around that. But my thing was exactly what you was like. Why didn't anybody help? Why didn't anybody try to intervene? I have to assume that the police were called. But
No, they
it's
were. I mean,
it's
they had to have been because
but to me, it's like walking by a river and seeing someone drowning in a river. You can call for assistance, but how long is it going to take to get there?
right.
And could you intervene? Is there something that you could do? And people were really angry at me today for just being like, I hate this bystander civilization that we live in, where like our first instinct is to pick up and record and not to jump in and help if we can. Because I feel like some intervention could have happened there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
100%.
It is very disappointing to see that happen. That's somebody's son
Hmm.
that not only killed someone, but that's somebody's son who died.
Yeah.
Um,
And so, as like a white person, the way that I have perceived things, media wise, all over for the last 2 decades, probably, um, would be if the roles were reversed. St. Louis would probably there would be some riots, and then it'd be turned into a big race topic that we would all be discussing, and it'd be all over social media as far as discussing the race issues and whatnot. But in this case, the roles are reversed. So obviously, or not obviously, but so it's not being discussed even in the news article that they wrote about it. It was no mention of race, which I personally definitely appreciated because
Mm.
we don't know if it was race related just by that 45-second video. Just like we don't know a whole lot of things are race related just based off of a short video, but get turned
Mhm.
into race issues.
yeah.
And
So,
so I guess
Butters, there was in the beginning of the video, I was led to believe that there was possibly a shot that happened before they started recording because you can hear him in the audio. And he said, I thought I heard it, but there's no blood and it doesn't look like he's shot. So I believe that there may have been a shot before they started recording, which, yeah, that would make someone scared to get up and run for sure.
Yeah. And that makes sense too. Um, News is not about informing people; it's about business now.
sure.
I
Yeah.
think we've lost that since God, I think since before our time. That's not about what is out there that's factual. It's out there the fastest. It's about clicks. It's about occupation. How many people are watching our station? What are the
Mhm.
ratings? What's the news? And like the news is never a period of time that we turn on the television and it's like, hey, here are a whole bunch of things that you can do, or like here are a list of horrible things that you on the couch can fix. It's here's a list of things that you can't fucking fix,
Mhm.
and it's like day in day out,
And we're just gonna
morning
take
news, afternoon
horrible
news,
things about
evening news.
humanity.
Like there are three different times that you get the news from multiple outlets on the television, and now you have the internet. So like it's just constant bad news.
Right.
It's like we're getting numb by that, and it's not helping when social change and things that we want to address as a society then get put up to that lens as well. Because then, like, what's a better way of getting your station to have the views is, have the video of five black officers pummel a black guy almost to death. That's what CNN did, and I'm pissed because if there's any sort of news station that's attached to my side of the political spectrum, it's CNN, and I cannot tell you of how many people I have heard of like they're at dinner that night and they're just playing that video on repeats. That is a disgusting way of having people watch your stuff. It was a very difficult video to watch. Um,
Yeah.
and it shouldn't be on television. Like it should be
I agree.
to the discretion of the family. If there was any sort of way to mitigate the traffic of that to make it, because throwing it out to everybody to see it is not going to make the problem go away. It's going to make things worse. Conspiracy theories about like, what did he do before that? What did he do after that? Like what what could have been done to have changed it? Well, nothing because we're watching it 2 weeks after the guy died in the hospital.
Mhm.
But like it's
I
just
remember being
frustrating because
little and
like
watching the news with my family. Like while we were eating dinner, it would be on in the background. And yeah, there would be some bad stuff, but not like this.
Right.
Not like this. I mean, that video, because I went over to CNN because of course Fox didn't talk about it at all. Um, so like I bounce back and forth between the two. And I feel like that's a good, healthy, like I'm listening to all of it. And you are accurate by saying they played that thing on loop over
mhm.
and over and over again. I mean, I watched in with the George Floyd video as well. Like I watched George Floyd die 400 times, and the first time was traumatizing enough. Like that was horrific to watch. That was horrific to watch. The one with the police officers, horrific to watch.
Yeah,
I don't understand like why they feel the need to do it like that, unless it's just to numb everybody to it, which isn't good either.
yeah. It's I think it's in the same vein of why nobody rushed in to stop what happened in St. Louis. It's just not thinking of the person in front of you.
Because unfortunately, our culture is to film first instead of help first. And that's just an American culture, in my opinion. Just because I've seen it far too often, where whether it be on a New York City train and something horrific happens, and everybody grabs out their phone and just allows it to happen. But as long as they got it on film, so they can get a viral video, is the way that I feel, and it's I feel like we have come numb, but I feel like at the same time we allow our emotions on both sides of everything to we all want a gotcha moment to prove our point instead of just coming to some sort of like meet in the middle kind of deal of like for me to get an understanding of where you come from, you get an understanding of where I come from, and get an understanding of each other and be able to coexist together, knowing that we have different points of view, we have different lives that we live all across America, and instead You have the people on the right when it came time for that the 6 officers or 5 officers with Tyree Nichols.
I don't even want to talk about it.
Yeah, well, or it's a gotcha moment of like, look, it's black people on black people.
Right.
And instead of going, we need police reform, like we genuinely do. And
Honestly, like a couple of years ago, you would hear me saying we need police reform. At this point now, I think the whole system needs to be completely deconstructed and rebuilt again. I'm not
yeah,
saying
and there's
fund. I'm not saying let's go lawless. Like I'm not. But the
right.
more that like I've been open to like listening to people with different opinions than me and different political affiliations with me, I see how much my own political party blinded me to certain things because it didn't fit the narrative. And
If we're
now
talking
I see,
political party, both of them do it
oh yeah,
because
no,
I agree with that
definitely
too.
both
Yeah,
of them
I
do it.
agree.
because I mean, every president all the way back to Reagan has had full control of the government through Congress and the presidency. And if both parties really wanted to solve any type of issues, they would do it in those years that they have the Senate, the House, and the presidency. But neither party does because they know why. As long as they can keep these problems at the forefront, they'll continue getting reelected. Because if they solve the problems, they what do we need them for?
Hmm.
And so that's when we the people need to come together, have these kind of conversations of how can I help, how can you help, how can we see each other's different points of view, and how can we meet in the middle so that we can solve this, because at the end of the day it's going to have to be on we the people that solve this. We got to stop relying on the government to solve this because it's not going to happen.
No,
um, I mean, we saw amnesty. If you want to go on immigration, we saw amnesty be done in the 80s under Reagan, and nothing's been done since then. And we know it needs to be rehauled. We know that police reform needs to be done, but neither party wants to pass anything because neither party wants to allow the other party to have a victory. And that's the sad reality of it. And unfortunately, we the people are taking on that same mantra where we just want gotcha moments for everything instead of just solving the damn problems.
Hmm.
That's my take on it. I don't know how you feel, but that's where I feel.
I'm right there with you on that. And a big example, and a lot of people in the comments can attest to it, is how East Palestine was handled this past month. It was a fucking horror show.
I don't.
Palestine?
From
I don't know enough about
I
that.
didn't see that.
the train derailments and the
Oh, East
EPA,
Palestine. Okay, Ohio. Okay,
East
Oh, in
I thought you were
Ohio.
talking.
Okay,
I
yeah,
thought you were
sorry.
talking about. Yeah, I thought you were.
not
I was the same way
not
that.
literally,
That's where my head went.
a
I
little
was
bit
like,
closer. It's in your backyard.
Oh
But
God, what happened now?
right. I was like, man, I missed that.
it's from at least the perspective that I know as somebody who has worked in a capacity that would at least try to help situations. The government works at a molasses pace, but there are times where they get blocked by certain things that could easily just be solved if, as we've all said, just have an open mind or be willing to receive the help. Uh, I know that there are some things that, you know Secretary Buttigieg could have definitely done better, but it's definitely not a photo op. Going there to be present to have the photo op was not something that should have been thought about or like discussed. But like, he is at the top, but he's still just one person. There are so many divisions within transportation, within energy, within all the different departments and secretaries and undersecretaries, that to expect one person to then go out and present themselves, that's feeding into the political theater. What is the boots on the ground stuff is deploying the EPA, getting in contact with them, try to figure out how to fix these problems, because they're most of the time going in completely blind to figuring out what to do, where the stuff is, what is actually there, and that is just compounded with just a whole bunch of precursors of problems that have just existed before they even got there.
Right.
regulations and not knowing what's actually within the tanks, having a braking system that is from the 1860s strategy. It's just a whole bunch of different things that just went wrong at the complete time, and then other things are going wrong at the complete time. But things are still progressing towards a certain like direction. Things are molasses moving, but they are still moving. It's not like a frozen in problem, but like it's just
But doesn't that kind of go back to like bystander syndrome?
oh, yeah, yeah,
Because like the
100%.
people like, and I'm not saying that like the government doesn't need to come in and do something for Ohio, okay? Like I'm not saying that. But I know that like aren't any of them feeling led to get up and support each other? Like we stopped doing
Mhm.
this a really long time ago, and it's just gotten progressively worse to where like I'm not seeing that like in Fort Myers, right? When all the storms came through Fort Myers kind of came together as their own little community, and they did what needed to be done, and they weren't getting a lot of help either. So, but I haven't seen that with Ohio. And I feel like we're all just kind of like in this like sit and wait. Like sit and wait, something good's gonna happen. Sit and wait, someone's gonna come help us. Like and I don't think that there's a political divide in it. I think it's just kind of the mindset that we have now. So where like I always grew up where it was like, oh, there was a big storm up the road, it knocked out the neighbor's house. Okay, put your shoes on. Let's get down there. Let's see what they need. Do they need to come stay here? Like that doesn't happen anymore. We don't take care of each other. We wait for somebody else to take care of all of us and then get mad when like two or three people can't help all the millions of us.
Mhm.
And I get like the want of whether it be the president or the secretary, whoever's in office at the time, when something catastrophic happens, like what happened in Ohio, to want to come out to we all know that the government doesn't care, but at the end of the day, when you're in a crisis like that, I get the perception of like, I just want somebody to come and show me that they care.
It's soothing.
And that's why the call on whether it be the president, whether it be the secretary in this case. Unfortunately, in this case, I don't see how the community could rebuild because it's a chemical spill that I don't know how to handle that chemical. If it's safe for me to breathe, if I go in and help neighbors, or
I don't even know if it's safe for them to be there.
right, and they don't know, and so I think that that's where some of the problem is. But
What's Aaron Brockovich going down there?
Yeah, yeah. I think she showed up, and I think one of the responses, because I think the anchor found out in real time that Aaron Brockovich was on site. She then asked, "Well, then where's Julia Roberts?" I was like, "Oh, come on!" Like, like that was her like
What?
response is like, "Oh, well, where's Julia Roberts then?" Like, it was just, it's, it was, man, like,
but this is what this is our American culture that I hate, is that we look to celebrities for shit, and it's like, what are they gonna do?
They ain't gonna do shit.
They ain't raising no money for nobody. They're not out there helping when they
yeah.
could, and they get the millions to do so. Why do
I
we look
mean,
to them?
well, remember when one woman started singing "Imagine" and then COVID ended?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
it's
she
all
she just
over.
cured it all up with that one song, and she passed it to it. It was perfect because we felt like we were one of them. I just felt like I was in one of their, 8 bedroom, 14 bathroom mansions
Yes.
in a wonderful gated community in California. I felt seen. It was
Yeah,
fantastic.
absolutely. So
Like,
seen. That was
uh,
the worst thing that happened during that was like on my top 10 worst things that happened during COVID playlist.
oh, it was so cringy, and
What?
having a wife who was from Southeast Asia, so like my entire family, or that side of the family is from a part of the globe that did it really well. New Zealand. It's embarrassing because like there was one time where she did bring that up as a joke of like, so I thought Gal Gadot fixed this. because like I dropped a plate the other day, and she just made the joke like, "Oh, this is what happens when you don't sing Imagine."
You didn't sing
And
Imagine.
yeah, and I really hope God, I kind of want to just keep talking. Is that possible? Like we don't have to wrap up at the hour. I have all the time in the world.
Yeah, I can go
I
a little bit over.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
can go a little
and
bit
I'm
over
speaking
for sure.
on
I
just
can't
behalf
go
of myself.
too much over, but I can go a little over.
Right.
So we can't go to like 2 o'clock in the morning. Damn. Okay.
No, not no,
No,
no. We
we
got
can't
some math
solve the world's
last.
problems. Yeah, we can't solve the problem in overnight.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I wish we could.
I was gonna
It-
say, yeah, because
I,
unfortunately tonight of all nights I can't. I got some stuff that I need to get done. But we can go. I mean, I'm okay so for a little bit.
yeah. For because then to answer your question from a little bit ago of like what kind of perspective I have about the overall thing, I don't imagine uh, any huge progress happening in either of our lives. So, how do we fail as small as possible? Will we try to make as much progress as we can towards what we see as the finish line? There's no blueprint for this, much like with any like environmental disaster, whether it be Flint or East Palestine or DC in 2003. We have no idea, not only from an environmental perspective, but also from a cultural perspective, of what exactly to do. One of the analogies I had in a conversation with somebody who I consider a second father is that we uh, are like dogs that want to catch a car, and we finally caught a car, we don't know what to do with it. That's what happened in the summer of 2020. Is that like we were given the spotlight, but we don't know what to actually say because like we've been spread over within our own community, like geographically, also like perspective wise, and like from different backgrounds, and like how far each one of us has progressed within our own life is different than the other. Of like what kind of cohesive person or group or like we don't have a Wakanda
Right.
Congress or anything. Like I would be so happy to call, say like Barack Obama and like Denzel Washington and say, "Hey, it's our turn. What was our plan? What's wrong with it?" Because I don't think that there could be a plan that would be agreed upon across the board. And so it's not just a problem that gets fixed from a uh, perspective of like understanding that there's racism and prejudice and the differences between those two things, but also just being a cohesive unit within our own communities. That also needs to happen for us to then, get closer as a global group, if that makes sense.
Sure.
It does. But
And
I
I
think like
guess
a
like
lot of oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, go for it.
I was gonna say, like, I feel like I was just sitting here thinking because I feel like I've been really guilty of thinking away or talking away. Um, like I'm always someone who's like, white privilege isn't a thing, right? Like I've always really felt that way until like not that long ago. And while I do think that some people tend to over exaggerate it or over embellish it, it also doesn't mean that it doesn't exist at the same time. Because like I just listening to you talk and listening to other creators on the app talk, I've never had to think like that. I've never, and that to me is like what I would consider like a white privilege because I haven't had to think like that. I've never had to get up and worry when I go somewhere that something could happen or that I'm going to be looked at differently or I'm going to be treated differently. My parents didn't have to have the talk with me. Like the talk with me was, if you get pulled over, just make sure that you do what you're told. Go. It wasn't this thing, and I'll never understand that. So I feel like it's really hard because like when I see something that's wrong and I know that it's wrong, like I want to say something, but then at the same time, if I say something, then I'm speaking from a place that I don't understand. And if I say this wrong or I say this wrong, then it's shut up. And so like that's kind of where I've struggled with it. If
Mhm.
that like does that make sense or no?
It
Yeah,
does. Yeah. Yeah.
because I think like when we talk about like we know the end goal and then how do we get there, kind of talk that like how do you get to somewhere where the goalpost continues to
It
change?
keeps moving.
And for instance, because Kat and I were talking about this, for instance, just the verbiage, right? It's gone from colored people to
Hmm.
people of color to black to African American to all different, and it's like how can as a white person how do I keep up? Because one day it's okay, the next day it's not, and then I'm deemed a racist because I didn't keep up with the terms of service of how to keep up with the language.
Well, first of
And
all, Meg, colored hasn't been used in a long time. No,
right,
I had to. I'm sorry. I had
right,
to.
I mean,
I'm
if there's
breaking up
any
a little bit.
constellation, at least for that part, the NAACP does exist. Goes back, it's a show of the times. Is that was what the CP meant colored people. It wasn't anything that was seen at that time as atypical or passe. Uh, but it does prove of just how much of a culture we can shift and change between it was like 1909 to 2023, or like even from my own perspective, when I made the second episode of America the Uncomfortable, I put a couple of the things that I typed out through Grammarly, and it dinged them as like grammatically incorrect, and I clicked on it. And there are new words to describe slavery. Uh, Slaveholders are now enslavers. There's the enslaved population. And like, I have a degree in history. I used to teach history. I'm black. Like, what the fuck am I doing wrong? So like, if there's any sort of solace, I like understand even people who are closer to the center of the conversations, daily or weekly, monthly, whatever it happens, we're getting it wrong too. I mean,
Mhm.
if there's any sort of frustration that I can air, it's just how much of a focus there is to certain labels of certain things, and that we're spending more time of pointing at the other person and for and then spending that energy saying that they're correct but not perfectly correct.
Mhm.
There's like a certain word that I'm completely forgetting right now in the moment, but like it's just like a weird like why can't we just accept that there's a situation happening historically, it existed, but I don't want to be dinged by Grammarly because it's not saying it correctly or in like the
Right.
right terms. So it's just like
It
that
even
hinders
stuff.
like
conversation. I feel like it makes it to where like it's hindering those conversations if you're so focused on what the politically correct thing to say is all the
yes,
time.
because like even in real estate, realtors can no longer use the term master bedroom
Yeah, yeah, further
What?
too.
because now all of a sudden after all these
Oh,
really a century of using it, it can't be used anymore. But now you're asking people that have used this terminology my entire life, 40 years.
right.
I've always referred to it as master bedroom. My parents have, their parents have. Uh, at least even my black friends refer to it as the master bedroom.
Yeah, I didn't even know that that was like a thing now.
Yes, and so now the realtors associations have barred it, and so now if you look, it says primary room,
Mhm.
like in listings and stuff. Um, but
Like,
it's
cool,
things
but
like
if
that
we're
that
so
like
we're just too focused on that. Like,
that's what I'm
I
saying. Like how like these are the goalposts that continue to change. It's like, oh, now all of a sudden this is a racial thing, and it's like, okay, I can try to adapt to that. Don't get me wrong. I will
Mhm,
absolutely try to call it a primary, but for 40 years of my life, I've always referred to it as the master bedroom.
mhm.
Not in any racial tone, obviously, because that's how I was taught by my parents, and they were taught by theirs, and everybody else. It was all over the real estate stuff,
In my
and
head,
that's
it
what they
was just
called it.
always like the best, biggest room in the house, so it was like the domain. Like, I look at
Right.
it as in like master, like the king, or
Yeah.
like I don't know.
And
I
just
don't.
within the last 3 years, it's like, no, you're not allowed to use that anymore. And so like that's kind of what I'm getting at. Like, how do we keep up when it like all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's racist now.
Mhm.
It wasn't
Yeah.
yesterday. Like, and I'm not meaning it to be racist, but you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely difficult to navigate through that because it's constantly changing, as you said, and I think I can understand the concept, historical value, like why it's being changed, and like, but like it's all about the application. How are we presenting these changes to everybody else? It
Mhm.
should be in like an open discussion. If it was like a conversation, like say, uh, like in the weird scenario that you're my realtor and you're showing me a house and you say master bedroom, if I were to then like freak out and say no, it's not master bedroom, it's primary bedroom, or whatever the term is now, like that is not a good way of like adapting to change.
Sure.
But if
No,
it's
like if
like
I
the
said
realtor,
master,
like the RIAA or whatever the uh, global group is for realtors. But if there's some sort of like implementation change in like the bylaws or whatever that happens like down the line, like a cool, and that's like the safest approach. But I think that's a perfect example of like why we're just a little bit further away from solidifying and making progress than we think.
but is like and I don't mean to downplay it by any means, but are we really getting hung up on a bedroom?
At least for me, I just want to know what the cost of it is.
Right. And so to me, it's like obviously nobody, at least that I know of in America or anywhere in the world, are they referring to the master bedroom as anything racial.
Well,
Yeah.
and I feel like not enough people are upset about it for it to be this big thing
Oh, it
that's
became a
just
big
putting
thing.
up another roadblock, another wall, another division, another uncomfortableness
Hmm.
that prevents us from like talking and prevents us from getting to like the root of things, as opposed to spending 5 hours hung up on, okay, well, can I say this? And what can I say this? Or if I can't say that, that's not a conversation. You've hindered it. It's just, but I
Britt
think
made
that
a really
also
good
I
point.
think that it starts covering up too. Like I've seen like some just blatant racist things that are overshadowed because like we have to just, I feel that there are people out there who want to label everything to be racist. Every single thing underneath the sun, from the way that if I wear fairy locks in my hair or if I wear a certain shirt, and we're hung up on that to where it's like, hey, like I'm sorry if that upsets you and we can have this conversation, but like there's some like really horrible stuff going on over here that we're not paying attention to because we're arguing over whether or not we can call it a master bedroom.
Hmm.
Meanwhile, like there's, I mean, we have to, like, I feel like the right especially tends to try to ignore the fact that there is actual racism. Some of the
Sure.
right, not all of the right, but And then I feel like some of the left thinks that everything is racist. So when you have everything is racist and nothing is racist, I feel like I'm kind of in the middle. Like, you guys are both really, really wrong. Like,
Oh yeah.
horribly wrong. Both of you are wrong. And we're
It-
not going to get anything fixed because we're all listening to you two just constantly.
like your dreads.
Honestly, I didn't. That's the thing. I've seen people get issues with the dreads, but I have found that it usually happens when white people wear a full head of dreadlocks in the box braid style, to where I wore mine in a half and had my natural hair on top. So I didn't. I was worried that I would, but from what I can observe, I've seen people get more hate for wearing like an entire full set with box braids.
Mhm.
Then
If I may, at
I
least like
don't. I wouldn't wear them that way just because I don't. I don't know.
hmm. For and I'm just reading some of these comments.
Sure.
Some are good and some are not so much. I don't think anybody expected Obama to fix anything because he's just one guy. I would have hoped that that would have fixed 400 years of history of oppression within the country, but it didn't. And so, like, we tried for a second term, still didn't. I mean, if you wanted to go from a litmus test just to like fix the pH balance, you would need at least 400 years. But then, what would that do? But from just like a basic standpoint, like, it's not going to be just like one person or a group of people. It's like I said in my episode 2 of the America thing coverable. It is quite contingent on white people allowing it to happen. Unfortunately, there's just a historical through line of power from the inception of the country or inception of Western Civ up to the current time that we can have as many marches as we want, but it's truly up to the people who are in power of the system to either have it change or have it be destroyed. That's something that I might have the most friction up against with certain people in my own community. In that we may yell as much as we want from any bridge or any street we want for equality, but up. It's not up to us yet. Um, we can't push the train back. Uh, it's up to the conductor to hit the brakes first.
Right.
And then once it gets to a slower pace, then if you want to have the same analogy, then you start pushing the train back or getting on the train, whatever the case may be. But it's. Uh, I mean, if there's anything that I can uh, talk about that's like a bipartisan idea, it's that Rage Against the Machine kind of did it right in the '90s and early 2000s with their music. The song "Testify" quotes George Orwell's book from 1984. Those who control the past control the present, and those who control the present control the future.
I
And
think that eventually, though, like, it has to die out, right? I mean, like, you're a prime example of that. I truly, truly, I was having this conversation. I think it was with Pribs, maybe when everybody was in town, to where, like, at some point, I mean, and this is not in my lifetime, my kids' lifetime. I mean, my kids' kids. But at some point, because of that melting pot, because of those relationships, because that, like, but then there's always just no. That's right. Never mind. I had this conversation and then it was brought up that there's like always going to be like racist assholes, right? So like
mhm.
there's always going to be those assholes that are like got to keep the bloodline strong. Like I just want it to be to where like it's not a thing anymore. And I don't know how we even begin to get there. Because I just feel like at some point, like they did like a rendition of how they think that people in America would look like 500 years from now. And we looked nothing like what we do now.
Mhm.
Like there really wasn't like white, Asian, black, Hispanic. Like it was more just mixed race with mixed race with mixed race with mixed race to where it eventually just became everybody looked different, and it but different in a way to where you couldn't really pinpoint like what are you?
Yeah.
And there was this like weird
Yeah.
obsession with like, well, what are
Oh,
you?
I
And
love that question, by the way.
are you?
It's like,
It's
what are
like
you?
I'm a lot of things. Like what do you mean? And I don't like it because it's uncomfortable, because it's icky, and it's not like me trying to avoid it because I know how horrible it was. And I
Mhm.
don't think that there's like anything that we can do to undo that. And we shouldn't try to undo it. And I have noticed that like even my kids in school, like they're not really learning about it. And I did. We learned all about it in school. And we were starting to learn about it at my kids' age. And I thought, surely like this month of all, no. And I haven't had my kids come home with any like questions about it or anything
Mhm.
like that. But I remember it was the other day, my son was on that stupid Xbox and he took the headset off and he's like, I can't be in that room anymore. And I said, why? What's going on? And he's like, those boys just keep saying the N word like over and over and over again. And they're laughing and they're spray painting it on the walls and in Roblox. And I know it's a bad word. And I was, and I'd asked him, do you know why it's a bad word? And he couldn't wrap his brain around it even when I was telling him this. And I was like, buddy, that like we did really bad things. Like America did really, really, really bad things to black people, and we made them our slaves, and we were horrible to them, and we hurt them. He had absolutely no clue, and I was a little taken back. And I guess that's kind of on me for like trusting the school system, with really anything. But I feel like that's where like the Republican in me kind of comes in a little bit to where we're focusing on things that don't matter so much at their age sometimes, when like I think that history is the most important thing to teach our children, because if you don't tell them what happened, like that's when those things can happen again. That's when
Mhm.
history can repeat itself. There is a whole generation of kids out there that have no idea what the Holocaust was. There are people
Oh
that
my
have
god.
the audacity to compare America now to Germany. Like this is lack of education. I have to believe that there's just not that many idiots in the world, and that this is lack of us teaching our children where America came from, all of it, the bad parts, the good parts, because that's what made us us. And we have to learn from that so that we don't come anywhere near that again. Nowhere
Mhm.
near that again.
Yeah. There's a documentary that I recommend, not just you guys, but everybody to watch. It's called Who We Are. And I talked about it just a little bit in my video, but it's Jeffrey Robinson, who was a brilliant guy. I've met him probably a half dozen times, and he always says the same thing. He's like, "You have really big hands," and I'm like, "Okay, cool, thanks, man." But he's a lawyer with the ACLU. Brilliant, brilliant guy. He has like a TED
Where we
talk.
are or where we
Uh,
were.
it's Who We Are,
Who we are. See, I
and
got
it
to pull it.
talks
I'm going to
about
text
just like,
myself now so I don't forget.
oh yeah, and I talk a little bit about it in my video, where I like just discuss the history of slavery and the establishment of slavery economics within colonial U.S. History, because like that's stuff that I have learned in the past 5 years, and I went through K through 12. I have undergrad. I have 3 graduate degrees, and I learned it when I was 32 years old from this documentary about certain things that have now blown my mind. There are things in the documentary and like facts about history in general that like I've had to take time. And I had to like pause and just weep. That's just uh, that's just how widespread this, I guess, problem or pandemic, whatever the thing could be to best describe it, just the pandemic of a lack of knowledge or lack of conscious towards the person. And I think what your son did is 100% correct in identifying it and saying, I don't want to be a part of that. I want to learn about why it's wrong.
Mhm.
And that's where we can go from there. Because, like, man, like, um, personally, I had no idea that um, indigenous communities own slaves. I had no idea. I learned about that this week from
Now,
a
did
YouTube
you
video.
was that like the same? I'm sorry. Was that the same? Were you the one that posted a video and it was talking about how um like we have this illusion that like in 1776 like all the slaves were like, oh, they're free. Like they're just free and it all went away. To where like I didn't really realize like how long it drug on after and actually how it got worse before it got better.
Yeah.
And they were just it was something about they were discussing like the increase in cotton sales and how you saw
Mhm.
what it was like pre 1776 and then they're talking about billions of pounds and millions of pounds of cotton, and he's talking so fast and then he just stops and he's like, have you ever actually like held cotton in your hand, and can you imagine how long it takes to get that weight? And I
Mhm.
had never thought of that. I don't think a
Yeah.
lot of us think about that part, and how the sales, like there was actually more. And I think I always had this false illusion that like as soon as that document was signed, right? Like everything was okay. And like Abraham Lincoln came in, I think like we fairy tale it a lot, history, when especially when we're teaching our kiddos and things like that, because that wasn't just the end of it. Like
Mhm.
it continued on and there were contracts and these human beings had to go and finish out their contracts. And then it was, what was it called, like indentured servitude, because they had to finish. Like that you
Yeah.
just put a different word on it.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's just slavery with extra steps, as to say. Yeah, that's that.
Right.
Apart from the cotton part, that's from the same documentary that I
Okay.
recommended. Yeah.
Okay.
The
It was your video that like led me, you know what I mean? Like algorithm wise, after I watched it, like I was just flipping through reels after I watched some of yours. And I think that it just kind of took me in
oh,
there.
that's
But there was
awesome.
like, yeah, so your video
The
is really
technology.
cool. Yep, gotta love it. I do.
Yeah.
I do love the algorithm sometimes.
Yeah. That fact about it, because I had no idea that it was in the Constitution. It's Article 5 that solidified a 20-year
Hmm.
time period where they can go get slaves and bring them back. It increased the population from 1790, which is about 700,000 enslaved, to 4 million within
Yeah,
70 years. And the trade embargo was closed in 1808. So how did they get from 700,000 to 4 million? And
right.
that facts there was what made me pause and or like pause the documentary. And it takes a lot to get me
Yeah,
like really upset. And that, man, like even right now, jeez, I'm glad you guys can see me. Wow. Just like realizing
how
what,
much?
yeah,
Yeah,
uh, like 341% increase.
yeah. And I
Um,
think that like that maybe that's our answer though, Tex. Like how do we make it better? Well, we start being really honest about what actually happened, because
yeah.
I just feel like history's been a little bit sugar coated, and
Oh, for sure it has.
I learned stuff today that just blew my mind, like from Pablo's video and then going through the algorithm, and I was like, whoa, well, I never knew that. But I mean, it's much like when I learned about the Holocaust. I did not know that there were other groups of people that were rounded up during that. Like I thought it was only the Jewish community. I
Right.
didn't know, and I just didn't know.
Mhm.
And I feel like we have to talk about it. And I know that a lot of people are like, but it's over with, but it's still important because we don't have an understanding of one another without seeing where one another came from
Sure.
before we got,
Mhm.
to this point. But we did go 30 minutes over.
Oh, we did.
We
Oh wow.
did, and we're gonna. I know.
God. Okay. I'm
Like we
sorry,
have to
guys. Yeah.
go.
We're gonna
No,
have to do this
don't be.
again.
I
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
when you
Like
come on.
like
It's a
I feel like we
open
just
invitation.
sat down. Like
No,
this.
we can do part two. I'll get with you after this one, and we'll do a part two. We'll set up a part two. Like I
Yeah.
Absolutely.
feel
Yeah.
like uncomfortable conversations with Pablo just needs to be like a thing.
Yeah. And I promise I will at least have a little like a little bit of like a mental preparation because like I've also been nervous this entire time just because like uh, not only from just like the nervousness of talking to an audience or what it could be, but like for a lot of these things, looking back into history or like knowing my own situation for like certain personal aspects, it's like a trauma.
Hmm.
Right.
So it's like talking to a you know survivor of certain things uh, about what they went through.
Hmm.
Uh, and
Yeah,
I
generational
just
trauma
I
is
go back to
a
that
thing.
video that you guys played, and like I'm not uh, I'm not so much upset about um, the video being there that I am of like knowing that two families are destroyed over like a second. Like that's the stuff
I
that like
couldn't
that's
imagine being either one of their mothers tonight.
yeah
Either one. Because no
yeah.
matter what, you lost your child. Both of
Right.
them lost a child.
Right.
Can Pablo have the lips filtered next time? What does that mean?
It's
I don't
like
even know.
so you have little lips on your ice cream bar that move when you I
Oh my goodness.
Oh, that's what she's talking.
don't know if that like
I
I
had
don't
no
know
idea
if you
either. I think I'm
can
gonna text. I'm like, what does that mean?
Uh,
handle
Like,
it.
give me another 2.5 hours before the jokes come back, man. It's still February, guys. Like, come on, jeez.
Sorry.
Ah.
We're trying to do better. But
Yeah.
we will have Pablo on again. I know that everybody really enjoys when you come on. It's always a good show, and
Enlightening.
I'm glad that we met through drama. I am
Did
truly.
we?
Yeah, because like
MFP.
you end up
Oh,
suddenly making
I forget
yeah.
he exists. Sorry.
Well, technically, we
It's
met
like a pit
through
bull, you know. Like,
Dawnish.
hmm?
Technically, it was through Dawnish first,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then Misfits' hatred
Wait, I
of
thought
our
he
friend
was Donish.
brought us
Everybody's
close.
me. Everybody wants to
I'm
be
Pablo.
me or be with me or whatever,
I
but
thought
like
Pablo
you
was
all got to get
Donish.
through like a 5'2" Asian woman to get to me. I mean, just got to
As
warn y'all about that.
who has gazed upon Pablo's greatness without the ice cream filter.
Right.
He's not Donish, and
I
he
can
is.
100% guarantee he's not Donish.
I have
And he's
back
not
up.
US Constitution and he's
They're not all the same person. There's just that
right.
many people that don't like you. Like it's not a conspiracy.
I think you're
um,
Pablo Ice Cream Bar on TikTok, right?
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah,
Pablo dot Ice Cream Bar. Is that what
yeah.
it
You
Which
is?
I've had to change that because of the parody accounts are
yeah,
making a lot of trouble. So you know, I mean, it's not my brand, but still, like, it's kind of weird to have my name and then see somebody else like post.
yeah.
There's a lot of weirdos out there,
It's weird, yeah.
unfortunately. It
Because you're
is.
primarily like you utilize Instagram more than the TikTok, don't you?
Yeah, because it's hard to take down my videos on the Instagrams.
Hey, red truck.
Not hurry.
Uh,
Not me either.
Red Truck is great, by the way. Like if you
I
ever want to
really,
have just like a really good conversation about just about life in general. Um, like I've had to go to truck for a lot of like this situation sucks, and I need someone to vent to. A reliable, great person.
oh,
So definitely recommend.
Mhm.
well, I
Uh,
appreciate
yeah,
you taking time out of your day and joining us. Please continue to post the content that you have been posting. I'm learning a lot from you, and because of those videos and your patience and your willingness to talk, like you're helping me become more well-rounded. You're helping techs become more well-rounded. We're showing people that, these conversations can be had without it being, I mean, it's going to be awkward, but hopefully if we do these a couple more times, they'll get easier every time. And
yeah.
Well, now he's got to end us with something motivational
gonna
or
say, now you
positive.
got to send us
Woo!
out with
No
either
pressure,
something
right?
funny,
None at
something
all.
positive, something motivational. It just can't be negative.
Yeah, and I did think about this because it's something that, uh, well, uh, the early part of March is a little bit difficult because it's when I lost both my parents back in '09 to cancer. One of the things that my mom used to say, which I'm translating from Italian to English, is be where your feet are. Understand that there's only so much you can do with the time that you have, uh, and worrying about all the things you weren't able to do with the time that you're given is going to diminish the time that you actually have. So, an easy way of thinking about that is be where your feet are, be where you're present, uh, and just have that be the foundation for everything else you do. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And nobody asks you to speak Italian, che cosa? Well,
I was gonna say, can you say
che
it in
cavolo ti lo togli? But, I mean, yeah. The next podcast we'll do in Italian. Okay, perfect.
I'll have to get my brother involved with that one. My older brother is fluent. He lived in Rome for a long time.
Oh,
I'll have to tap out because I won't
there's
understand.
a north-south fight, which we'll talk about some other time. But yeah,
I have two sisters that live in Rome.
wonderful country. I'm.
I've never been. I've never been.
Yep.
I'm not.
All right, Pablo. Well, definitely appreciate it. Appreciate your perspective for sure. And we will 100% do this again.
Yeah,
We'll see
Pablo
you
on the
soon,
regular.
guys.
All right. Everybody else, y'all have a good evening. Thank you for
Go,
joining us.
go Yankees! Go, Red- go
Oh,
Yankees!
Go Red
Go
Sox.
Rock